Hi, I'm Megan and welcome to my kitchen. In today's What's for Dinner video, I'll be sharing with you what meals we had this past week. Our dinners were easy to make, budget-friendly, and delicious. If you'd like to get some weeknight meal ideas for your family, then just keep watching. Tonight for dinner, I tried a new recipe for shrimp and grits. This came from Taylor Elmore. I will include a link to her video in the description box below, so be sure to check it out for the exact measurements. You'll definitely want to give this recipe a try. I've used other recipes for shrimp and grits before, and they were good, but I felt like this was delicious, and it was really easy. So to get started, I'm just adding my water to a saucepan. I'm going to bring it to a boil. Once it's at a boil, I just move this to my back burner. I'm going to add in my salt, and I'm going to whisk in my grits so that they don't clump up. And then I'm just going to cover this with a lid, and you'll definitely want to cover it with a lid unless you want to clean up your entire kitchen. This stuff splatters everywhere. Turn this down to low and cook these for about 5 to 7 minutes or until they're nice and tender. And just a quick note, these are quick grits. While those grits are cooking, I'm going to get started on everything else. So in this skillet, I have it over about medium heat. I'm going to add in my bacon, and I'm just going to cook that until it's nice and crispy. And then using a slotted spoon, I'm going to remove the bacon to a paper towel lined plate to drain, and I'm going to leave the bacon grease in the skillet. Next, I'm going to add in my shrimp and saute those for just a couple minutes until they start to turn pink. You don't want to overcook the shrimp because you'll add them back in later, so they will cook a little bit more. To the shrimp, I'm adding some cayenne pepper and then some Cajun seasoning, and you'll just want to do this to taste. Once the shrimp are done, I'm going to remove those to a plate as well and set those aside. And then in this skillet, I'm going to saute my bell pepper and green onions. Now, I did reserve some of the green onions to garnish it with. And if you need a little bit of additional oil in the pan, just add a little vegetable oil. I'm going to cook those for just about 3 to 5 minutes or until they get nice and soft. While the veggies are cooking, I'm going to finish my grits. So I'm just going to add in my butter, the cheese, and then the recipe calls for heavy whipping cream. I just had some half and half, so that's what I'm going to use. And then I did taste this and seasoned it with a little bit of salt and pepper. And then that's it. I'm just going to turn that on to low and just allow that to stay warm while the shrimp and everything finishes cooking. To my bell pepper and green onions, I'm going to add a clove of minced garlic, and then my chicken broth. I'm just using some water and chicken bouillon. I'm going to stir that together and cook it for about a minute, and then I'll add my shrimp back in, as well as the crispy bacon. Now, I did reserve some of the bacon again to garnish it on top, and I'm just going to cook that for another minute or so, and then that's it. That'll be done. Now, I know this might seem like a lot of back and forth, but I promise this recipe is not hard at all. It's not complicated. While the shrimp is cooking, the grits are cooking, so you really only have to focus on one thing. And here's the finished shrimp as well as the grits. And then to serve this up, you just lay down a bed of the grits, take the shrimp mixture, put that on top of it, and then again I garnished it with some of the remaining green onions and crispy bacon, and this was delicious. This was so good. I highly recommend this recipe. Tonight for dinner, I just did not feel like cooking at all, so we dug through the freezer, and here's what I ended up making. So for myself, I cooked some of these chicken strips that I got from Aldi. I cooked these in the air fryer, and then I cooked up some of these curly fries from Kroger, also in the air fryer. And then for my husband, I cooked up some of these buffalo wings that I got from Aldi, and I just baked these in the oven according to the package instructions. And here are the finished plates. So for my husband, he has some curly fries, some of the wings, ketchup, and blue cheese. And then for me, I just have some curly fries, ketchup, and then the chicken strips and some honey mustard. And that was dinner this night. For dinner this night, we just did some grilled chicken salads. For the chicken tenders on the salads, I made some grilled Italian chicken tenders. This will be in an upcoming video. I like to make these in big batches and then freeze them. And then all I have to do is pull them out and thaw them, and it makes a really quick and easy dinner. So for the salads, I just have some romaine lettuce, some diced up tomato, cucumber, some shredded cheese, bacon bits, and then we have some croutons, French's fried onions, and then for the dressing, we both just used some homemade ranch. This is so easy. I've mentioned this before. I just use the recipe on the back of the Hidden Valley Ranch packet. It's basically just mayonnaise, milk, and then some of the ranch dressing, and that was dinner this night. This dinner was so good. Those chicken tenders are really delicious, and the salad really hit the spot. For dinner this night, I made Asian salmon in foil. I haven't made this recipe in quite a while. My husband really honestly isn't a fan of salmon, but he does like it this way. So that's why I don't make it so often, because I know he doesn't love salmon. To get started, I'm going to make the marinade or the mixture for the salmon. So in this bowl, I'm just adding my soy sauce, rice wine vinegar, sesame oil. I'm then going to add in the honey. And I forgot to mention this, but my oven is preheating to 375 degrees. Next, I'm going to add in the ginger. I believe the recipe calls for fresh ginger, but I didn't have any, so I'm just using some powdered ginger. Then I'm going to add the sriracha. Now, the sriracha is optional. If you don't like heat, you can leave it out. I like to add it. It doesn't make it really spicy. I mean, if you like spicy food, you could, of course, add more. I'm going to add in the pepper, the minced garlic, and then I'm going to whisk that together really well. I have a cookie sheet that I have added foil to. I've placed my salmon fillets on top of it. I'm then going to brush the mixture over the salmon. You can also just pour it on there. That's fine as well. And then I'm just going to crumple up the foil around that. And then this will go into the oven. The recipe calls for 15 to 20 minutes, but my salmon is really pretty thin, so I only cooked it for about 10 minutes. You'll just want to cook it until it's cooked according to the temperature that you like it. Some people like their salmon well done. Some people like it a little bit more rare. For one of my sides tonight, I'm making mashed sweet potatoes. I have these 2 sweet potatoes that I have washed really well. I'm going to peel them, cut them into large chunks. I placed them into cold water, brought it to a boil, and then boiled them until they were nice and tender. I've drained them and added them back into this pot. Now, with the sweet potatoes, you can either do savory sweet potatoes or sweet. We like ours sweet. So to these, I'm going to add in a couple tablespoons of butter, a little bit of half and half just because I happen to have it on hand, but you can use cream or milk, whatever you have. Then I'm going to add in just a little bit of salt. It doesn't really make it salty, but remember, salt is a flavor enhancer, so it's just going to enhance the other flavors that I'm adding to this. Then I'm going to mash this together. I also added a little bit of brown sugar, just maybe a tablespoon or a tablespoon and a half. And most of the time to my mashed sweet potatoes, I like to add a little bit of cinnamon to that. But I happen to have some of this Land O'Lakes cinnamon sugar butter that I found at Aldi, so I'm just going to add in about a tablespoon of that. If you prefer your sweet potatoes more on the savory side, just leave out the cinnamon and sugar. But I really love these. They really remind me of like the sweet potato casserole at Thanksgiving time. So here is the salmon. Once it was done, I just broiled it in the oven for a minute or two just to get a little bit more brown. And then for the Brussels sprouts here in the back, I've shared this several times on my channel. I will include a link in the description box below showing how I make these. They're super delicious. Here are the finished plates. So for the salmon, I just garnished it with some sesame seeds and chopped green onions. And then we have the sweet potatoes and the Brussels sprouts. This was super delicious. Tonight for dinner, I'm making a chicken recipe that I saw on Jessica O'Donoghue's channel. I will include a link to that video in the description box below. This is super easy. All you need is Italian dressing and honey mustard dressing. You just mix equal parts of that together, and then I'm going to take a couple chicken breasts, add those chicken breasts to a Ziploc bag, add the mixture of Italian dressing and honey mustard, and then just refrigerate that. You can do it for, an hour. I like to do it overnight, but however long you have will be fine. To go along with this, I'm making some creamed corn. I love this recipe. I make it all the time. It's meant for the slow cooker, and that's how I normally cook it. But to be honest, on this day, I just forgot to put it in the slow cooker, so I'm just cooking it over the stove. I have a couple cans of corn that I've drained. I've added them to this pot. I'm going to add in the cream cheese and then some half and half just because I have it on hand, but I usually just use milk. I'm then going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. And this recipe is from Plain Chicken. I'll include it in the description box below, so be sure to check it out. And the recipe does not call for this next ingredient, but I like to add just a little pinch of sugar, maybe not even a teaspoon, just a little pinch. You can leave that out. Then I'm going to add in some bacon. This is just a couple of slices that I have crisped up and then chopped into little pieces. I'm going to stir that together and then just allow that to cook on about low, stirring it often for about 10 to 15 minutes or until everything's warmed through and the cream cheese is nice and melted. To cook the chicken, I'm just using my Cuisinart griddler, but you could use a George Foreman or just cook it on top of the stove or in the oven or on an outdoor grill. Just make sure you cook it until it's 165 degrees internal temperature. And here's my finished plate. We weren't super hungry this night, so we just did the chicken and the corn. I garnished the corn with some remaining crispy bacon and then some chopped up green onions. And I forgot to mention, I did sprinkle both sides of the chicken with some salt while it was cooking. This is so good. This chicken has so much flavor. I recommend you give this a try. For dinner this night, I'm making Hawaiian chicken sandwiches. I'm going to start out by marinating my chicken. You can do this in as little as 30 minutes up to overnight. I started this the morning of. I'm just going to take a couple of these thin sliced chicken breasts and then some of this teriyaki marinade that I got from Walmart. This is just the Great Value brand. I'm going to add both of these to a Ziploc bag, shake it around a little bit, and then place it in the refrigerator until I'm ready for it. To go along with dinner, I'm making broccoli salad. I've made this recipe several times and we enjoy it. I'll include it in the description box below. To this bowl, I'm going to add in my mayonnaise, then the vinegar. Now, the recipe calls for, I believe, 3 tablespoons of vinegar, but I'm not a big vinegar fan, so I only use 2 tablespoons of it. I'm then going to add in the sugar, and you can just use the sugar and vinegar to your taste. Then I'm going to add in some salt and pepper and whisk that together until it is well combined. I'm going to set that aside and move on to my broccoli. Now, I prefer my broccoli in smaller pieces, so I'm just going to take this package and chop it up a little bit. Here's about the size that I like it. So I'm going to do that and then add the broccoli to that bowl. You can really customize this recipe and add in whatever you like. The recipe calls for finely diced red onion. I leave that out because unless we're eating raw onions with our pinto beans and cornbreads, we're not really a fan of raw onions. Sometimes I add in sesame seeds. I would have added those today, but I just didn't have any on hand. I also like to add in dried cranberries. Today I'm just keeping it simple. I'm going to add in some shredded cheddar cheese and then some crispy bacon that I have cooked and then drained and chopped up. And then I'm just going to stir that together really well, cover this, and place this into the refrigerator until we're ready to eat. I've made these teriyaki chicken sandwiches several times before, and I've never put any condiments on the sandwiches, but my husband really likes condiments on his sandwiches or burgers, so I wanted to make something for him. I remembered seeing an old Pioneer Woman recipe for a teriyaki burger, and she made a teriyaki mayonnaise. So I looked up the recipe. I'll include it in the description box below. I just kind of loosely followed it, but this was so good. I was afraid it was going to be nasty, and it wasn't. It was delicious. It was just mayonnaise, some teriyaki sauce, honey, and a little bit of sriracha. Next, I'm going to cook my pineapple. So here I just have a small can of pineapple slices that I've drained. I'm just going to cook them on my Cuisinart griddler. I love this thing. It's so cool. My parents got it for me for Christmas a few years ago, and I love it. I use it all the time. I just use a small can of pineapple because it's just my husband and I tonight. And then once the pineapple's done, I'm going to remove it to a plate, and then I'm just grilling my marinated chicken breasts until they are 165 degrees internal temperature. Once the chicken was done, I added a slice of Swiss cheese. The recipe called for provolone, but I used Swiss because that's what I had on hand. I just took some hamburger buns, added some lettuce and tomato on my husband's sandwich. I didn't have any lettuce or tomato. I added the chicken and cheese, then the grilled pineapple and some of the mayonnaise, and then I served that with the broccoli salad. This was so good. I know I've said that several times in this video, but I mean it. These were delicious. And later this night, we ended up splitting the third sandwich and we added bacon, and it was amazing. Tonight for dinner, I tried another new recipe for seared ahi tuna. Now, I just loosely followed a recipe. I'll include it in the description box below. This was so easy. Dinner literally took not even 10 minutes. So first, I have this tuna. I get this at Aldi. It is sushi quality. We get this all the time, and a lot of times I'll make my husband poke bowls with it, but this is really inexpensive. It's about $4.30 or so for this bag. So I'm just going to take the tuna out and set it aside. Meanwhile, I have this cast iron skillet. I've got it almost on high heat. I have some vegetable oil that I've added to it that's coming up to temperature. In this shallow dish here, I'm adding in some sesame seeds. Now, the recipe called for black and white. I didn't have any black sesame seeds, and I didn't want to buy any just for this recipe. I've never tried this before, so I wasn't even sure that I was going to like it. But I'm just going to take the tuna and dip each side into the sesame seeds, and then place this into the cast iron skillet. And how long you cook your tuna really depends on how you like it. If you like it rare, I would just cook it for maybe a minute on each side. We like ours more medium rare, so I cooked it for about 2 minutes per side. And I was really nervous because, as you can see, some of the sesame seeds got really brown. I was afraid that they would taste burnt, but it didn't at all. They tasted really nutty. It was actually really delicious. So again, this took not even 5 minutes to cook the tuna, just 2 minutes on each side. And then I removed it to my cutting board. I sliced it into thin slices, and then The recipe called for you to make a like volcano sauce and then to use teriyaki sauce to drizzle on top. I'm just using some of this sriracha mayonnaise because I already had it on hand. And I also had some of this unagi sauce or eel sauce that I got on Amazon. I had this on hand as well. So I just drizzled that over the tuna. And then on the side, we have that kale salad. And that was dinner this night. And this was so incredibly yummy. And it was a really quick and easy and healthy dinner. And that's it for this week's What's for Dinner video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please hit the thumbs up button below and subscribe to my channel. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.